I want to welcome you all to the second webinar in our Rendering and Autodesk A360 webinar series. My name is Allison Gearing-Klein, and I'm on the product marketing team for Rendering in A360. Today our webinar is on how to use cloud rendering in Navisworks, hosted by Thomas Schweiger, a project manager of BIM 360 here at Autodesk. Thomas Schweiger is an experienced software application manager with a background in construction and information systems. He has over 10 years experience helping customers get the most out of Autodesk solutions in industries spanning manufacturing, architecture, engineering, and construction. Before we get started today, I just wanted to go over a few things about this session. Today's webinar is scheduled for a half hour, and we'll save about 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. If you have any questions at any point during the webinar, you can type them into the chat box here, and we'll try our best to answer them during the Q&A session. If we don't get to them during the Q&A session, we'll make sure to follow up through email. And you can write to us at rendering.community@autodesk.com. This webinar will also be recorded, and we'll be sending you a link to the video within 48 hours. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, Thomas Schweiger.
Thanks, Allison. Just checking, can you see my screen, Allison?
Yes, can see it.
Brilliant. Great. Well, also a very warm welcome from myself, Thomas Schweiger. So I'm actually the product manager who's responsible for implementing that feature and connecting Navisworks with the cloud rendering capabilities that we offer. And I'm really glad I'm able to present to you and talk to you about this capability and how to make the best use of that. So without further ado, let's jump into the session. So I'm going to show you today how you can quickly create stunning renders from coordinated project models, combining both the power of Navisworks with the power of the cloud. I'll show you how to set it all up, any tips you need to use to get you great results every time you create renders from Navisworks in the cloud. And I'll also talk to you about how materials are supported in your workflows, especially considering Autodesk suites and how these are supported across the products that you're using, and what happens when you set up materials in Revit and how they get across. So briefly, that's what to expect. So with that, before I take you through the individual steps and actually how to use it and kind of go more into the product and also a live demonstration, I want to take you through the overall workflow. And it's just a simple 5-step process, but it will help guide you through it and kind of get you a repeatable play on how you actually use it, and also to basically ensure you get great results every time. So first off, it's about collecting the model data. Now, you may receive a Navisworks file. You recognize that by the file ending NWD, so that has already all the models in it baked into it, so you have basically a great starting point. Or you may receive individual models that you can open in Navisworks. That may be Revit files, that may be IFCs, that might be maybe DWG files, that may be MicroStation models, whatever it may be. You can bring them into Navisworks, combine that into one whole project model, and then deal with it from there on. And any and all of that, if you can open it in Navisworks, you can use them for rendering in the cloud. Once you've got the models collected, you'll need to do a little bit of preparation, but primarily some checking and some making sure everything is set up. So this isn't really about going through long-winded processes, but just making sure everything is right. So first of all, you will need to make some decisions about what sort of viewpoints do you want to render. Is it about the entrance area of the building, so maybe some overall view with looking at the parking lot and things like that. just some basics to think about and setting up these viewpoints so you have them ready and available so your user can quickly jump around between them. There's also location to consider. I'll talk about that in more detail. Obviously, that will affect your sunlight and how that affects shading on the building, and just to check that the materials are set up. And I'll talk more about that in detail. Once you've done that, you are ready to submit the render job to the cloud. So I call this here a basic render, which is basically using the default settings. And the idea here is really to validate, the viewpoint and the lighting and the materials without, consuming any credits, and also because it's very quick. Then what you do is you can actually view the results straight away on the web in the cloud rendering interface. And from there you decide, okay, does this look right generally? Do I need this in a higher resolution, in a better quality? If that's the case, if it is okay, you commit to the full render, and I'll show you how you can do that exactly from within the interface. So you just kick off the process again and say, I want this in a higher quality. If you're not happy, you simply go back to step 2, where you maybe look at, maybe you want to look at it from a different angle, maybe you adjust the lighting a bit, maybe you need to set up some different materials, and then go through the workflow again. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a guideline and step-through process of how you best use it. As I said, it's not very difficult at all. Just bear these in mind, and great to go. So let's talk about these in more detail. So first off, collecting the data. As I said, you can open the NWDs, or you can import the models. So we support a whole variety of industry formats for model data. There's actually a link at the bottom, which we can also share with you, that actually gives you detailed documentation about all different formats that we support. Then go ahead, review the model, make yourself familiar if you're not familiar with it already, and really the next thing then is set up the viewpoints that you want to render. And you do that through the viewpoint menu by simply, once you've navigated to a location, you simply hit Save Viewpoint, give it a name. You can organize it in folders if you have very many that you want to render, or the model is also used for other purposes, so you can actually split it out and say render views and organize it a bit better like that. So that's that part done. Next up, let's talk about location and sun. Now, you can either use relative lighting, which will influence the position of the sun in your rendering and for the appearance. So relative lighting, you basically just, with these sliders, you change azimuth and the altitude of the sun. And I'll show you that later. That's very easy to kind of simulate where the sun is standing. If you want to get more specific, if you want, really say, okay, my building is located Boston downtown, and I want to know what the lighting situation looks like in the inside, on the 24th of September at 2 p.m. Then you can do that. And the good news is there's, similar to materials, if you've set up these locations in Revit, this information will come across and you can simply reuse it, and all you have to choose and pick is the date and time. Simple as that. If the model comes from somewhere else, you can still plug in the latitude and longitude to find out these coordinators. Not very difficult. Just Google a place name, latitude and longitude, and Google will actually, give you back the coordinates that you need to punch into this dialog, and you're set to go. So next up, let's talk about the materials. So what you see here is the material panel. So it shows you the document materials, so materials that are already being used in your model, but also the entire Autodesk material library. So it's a comprehensive library of materials defined with textures, colors, parameters for reflection, and the likes. So you don't have to worry about that. All you need to think about is, okay, I've got a building with some glass panels, so I probably should assign some glass material to it. So it's translucent, but also has some reflectiveness on it. If it's some shiny material like some metal poles or some metal cladding, use the materials for that. And probably also things like brickwork, some very textured materials, so you get the perfect appearance. So like I said, if the model comes from Revit and somebody has actually set that up already in there, that information will come across and you can simply use it. You're free to change it if you want to, maybe look at some alternatives or kind of look at different options. But essentially, it's already done for you. Just have to render it. Or there's, of course, the option to manually apply. And I'll show you, again, very easy to do. So now there's an important tip to bear in mind. And that is there's some settings inside of Navisworks that you should switch on, or the mode you should change to, so you actually get a good feel for what the end result will look like. And that means to switch on the full lights, because otherwise it uses some headlights or some simulated kind of scenario. But the cloud rendering uses the full set of lights. You should switch on the full lights so you actually get the same lighting appearance. And the same goes for using the render mode, which you should set to full render. Shaded gives you kind of general idea of what the colors might look like, but in terms of actually applying the textures, so whether you have some gravel that's a bit more coarse, or some brickwork, or some in situ concrete, things like that, you want to see them inside of Navisworks. So switch that to full render. It doesn't actually, how should I say, it's not a long render that you have to wait for a long time. It just applies the material, so you still have the capability to spin around the model in real time, but it gives you immediately a preview. I'll make one caveat here, though, especially when talking about lighting. So Navisworks doesn't really show you the shades, but at least you have a good idea of lights and materials, so better understanding of the end result. Okay, then you're basically ready to send it off to and start rendering. So since this is your first pass, the easiest thing to do is to use your default settings, which essentially the most important things are to keep the render quality at standard and the image size at medium. So you will actually always see down here the cloud credits that are required to perform this render and how many that are available, and after committing that render, how many would be left. So you see here for that setting, it actually means 0 cloud credits required. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why we choose that for this sort of basic trial render first. You don't spend any credits on trying it out. It gives you a good indication of the final result, and it also comes back much more quick. And then again, going on for the process, if you got the right results back, you just re-render that from the cloud, and you get the perfect result. I will talk about here maybe also the output type. So you do have the ability to control the output type, so you can choose between still image, an interactive panorama, and illuminance. So still image, I guess, is pretty clear. The viewpoint, as you see it in Navisworks, will get rendered, with all the lighting and materials applied. Interactive panorama takes your viewpoint as a location and generates an interactive panorama that you can actually zoom in and out a bit and kind of rotate around so you can have a look around from that particular position. Again, I would recommend as a first pass, use the basic render. You can get all these more advanced outputs in the cloud by just simply re-rendering that. And the luminance is basically a solar study that gives you some indication of how well light is distributed. So especially it's interesting for internal views. So you submitted the job to the cloud. Let's go ahead and carry on. So you will get some bubble notifications to view when it's being rendered online, so the rendering progress, you can look at that. And it will also give you a bubble when the render is complete. Either way, if you click on that link, it will open up your browser, take you directly to rendering Autodesk 360 and show you the results in there. I'll show you in more detail what you can do in there, specifically the re-rendering with different settings. Because this is now where you say, okay, this is a great start. Let me get that in a higher resolution. Let me get that in a higher quality, and commit to the full render. And hopefully, so you can use that re-render using new settings directly from A360. With these settings, I'll show that again in the live demo just in a bit. And then hopefully you get these great results that some of our customers have posted on the gallery, like these buildings, and with lots of texture and lots of light and a very rich imagery that helps you convey what's going on in that particular building. So with that, I'm going to switch over to Navisworks and start showing you how to actually use it. So as I said, you could append individual models and bring in some smaller models. I've got one NWD prepared, so I'm going to open that. So that's a supermarket, with complete parking lots, petrol station, everything set up. So that actually consists of several models. There's structural, architectural, there's survey work. It's a complex project, and there are actually some viewpoints already set up. If that wasn't the case, I can very easily, by simply navigating to a specific location, I can say, okay, this is a great viewpoint. I like that. I want a render of that. I'll simply go to the Viewpoints tab, save the viewpoint. It creates that here. I call that entrance. And I can also organize these in folders. So simply by dragging and dropping those in. But I can just tab through these as and when I need. So that's really the first part done. Now remember, we want to set the lighting to full lights and the render to full render. Okay. Now once that is done, let's actually look at the rendering tab. If you don't have the rendering tab, you can, by simply using the tools, Autodesk Rendering, or Control and F4, you get the rendering tab, which gives you a number of things. First up, let's look at the location. So now you see the sunlight is on. You can see the sun high and bright and shiny up here. We've actually got the relative lighting set up. I'll show you what happens when I move the azimuth. I can play around with various settings to give it a different appearance. You can also play around with the altitude, as it's early in the day, later in the day. Or I can actually reference my geographical information. Now, like I said, that the location settings, so there's a Revit model, these variables, the latitude and longitude, will already be preset. They just simply, use them. If not, Google for those values and stick them in. And then you can pick the date. Okay, today is the 24th, and change the time accordingly, depending on location. I'll just switch back to the relative lighting. There's some interesting results like that. So one of the things we could do now is we can look at the materials, and in this case that hasn't been actually any particular materials haven't been applied. So it can maybe use for the site work. I can use some asphalt to apply. And simply dragging and dropping that on here, I can apply that. But I can also be more specific and use some of the technology and some of the selection tools in Navisworks. So if I look at this rain screen, this cladding, if I say I want to select the same type, so all over the building, all the cladding, and maybe I want some stone for that. So maybe I want some field stone masonry. And apply that. And then probably should also change these light poles, these lamp poles, use a metallic paint. Could go for green, could go for red, I don't know. I like green. So I can either do drag and drop, or I can pick the material from the list here and say assign to selection. And when I click away, this turns green. Great. So this is really all I need. So now I can just change to the render panel and say rendering cloud. Now this gives me this dialog where I can make the choices. I could really just say start rendering and send that off. What I will say is people ask that sometimes, which can submit multiple views. So at this point, you're only rendering the current view. It's still obviously beneficial to set up the viewpoints up front so you can quickly tab through them, but you need to submit one at a time. So just leave that, the still image, standard, and the image size. The render quality is obviously, again, you can choose between standard and final, which will impact the quality, and then send that off. And so start rendering that. It will do some conversion and uploads to the cloud. I see we're very short on time now. So I'll just quickly jump to what this looks like once that gets submitted. So this is an example I did earlier. So with that cladding, with the green lamps, and with the asphalt. So if you're happy with that, generally with the lighting aspects, with the materials applied, you say, okay, I want to use this for a client presentation, I need this in higher resolution, I can say re-render with new settings, and I say in here, change my render quality to final, and maybe give me a higher image size. It will then again calculate the cloud credits required, and you can start rendering that. Or you could also re-render as a like in this case, an interactive view. So this is a view from inside the building, so you can actually look around and see what things look like, even up to the ceiling. And zoom in depending on the quality and the look that you require. So you can't move around, but you can certainly look around. I think that's a great way of conveying what the little thing looks like before it's being built to non-technical users. With that, I'd say let's open it up for Q&A, and sorry for running a bit over there. Okay. I'm just going to quickly look through the list of questions and start hitting the ones. Okay. Jenny asks, will it render animations? Jenny, not at this point. I know that one of the things that people are really interested in with simulations in Navisworks, which are very time-consuming to render, is an area we're interested in. So we're considering for future releases, but not at this point. Ahmed is asking about does it receive other program materials. So maybe to be specific, if you bring in like Bentley models, IC models, it will give you a visual appearance, it will give you colors, but it will not take in the materials. Obviously, we're using the Autodesk material library. There's really an easy one-to-one translation between these other materials. But you only need to reset the materials for the maybe the surfaces and areas where there isn't really anything set up. Wayne asks, is it possible to utilize different rendering materials and different viewpoints in the same object, similar to changing the color per viewpoint? No, the rendering materials are actually set per model, so that would require some other probably setting up a copy of the model or something like that, and simply shifting the viewpoints across. So just save a copy as NWD and then apply different materials. That's probably the best way to do that. Did you have issues with huge projects like in 300 megabytes file? No, this actually works brilliantly on very large models. You might see a bit of a delay getting the initial model up there, but that's not a problem at all. Alison, there are a couple of questions regarding cloud credits. I think you're probably in a better position to answer those.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So to see how many cloud credits you have, you can log into your Autodesk account and click on the reporting tab to review your cloud credit balance. And this is where you'll be able to purchase more cloud credits. And so I'll just paste in this FAQ link for everyone if you want to learn more about cloud credits. Yeah,
I think there's one very good question here. Is there any difference in cloud rendering in Navisworks Simulate or Manage? That's actually a great question. I should have pointed it out at the beginning. So that is supported in both Navisworks and Simulate, and the results are the same. There's no difference. Okay, I'll hand it over back to you, Alison. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. That was a great presentation, and thanks to everyone for attending. Please let us know if you have any more follow-up questions at this address, rendering.community@autodesk.com. And you can get more information on the Autodesk Navisworks page here, and we also have a Rendering in A360 product page with more information. And for those who use Rendering in A360, you will be interested in our next webinar in the series, which covers our new interactive rendering feature, which allows for real-time interactive rendering for Fusion 360 models. So we'll send you a link to register for that in our follow-up email as well. So thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.